The Art and Artifacts, Where History Meets Art exhibit is a series of fine art photographs juxtaposed with the actual items that they represent. By doing this in an artistic manner versus strictly a representational manner, we bring a little more attention to the actual image, and it helps us understand more than about its actual historical significance. So here we are in the archives, and I love this place. It's like going into my parents' attic when I was a kid with things that they saved from generations before. But here's a great example of what I might see as I'm coming through here. This is a drum from the Elgin Watch Factory Military Band. And I see the drum, obviously, as you do, but I also notice the kind of texture in the rope that's holding this together, the shape of this leather, and the pattern of 2 or 3 of these all strung together, and again, the pattern of the wood behind it. These are the things that I tend to look at if I'm trying to make something that's a little more artistic and not just a representational photograph. Now, when I saw this trunk the first time, it was in a dark area in the archives, and I thought, oh, that's a neat old trunk, and probably had some very interesting stories. But I couldn't see it real well, so I put a kind of a bright light on it. And when I put a light on it, and I saw this area right down around the clasp, what really popped were all the colors. The orange of this little piece of broken leather, the texture came out of, this is either metal or leather, I'm not quite sure what the trunk is made of. The corrosion around the clasp, these just popped as you see in this image, and that was from putting the light on it. So this is one of my favorites. And by looking at this, you would probably never know this is a trunk. But here in the exhibit with the trunk in front of it, it makes you wonder, what has this trunk seen? Where has it been? And again, it merges the art and history, which is the whole concept behind the exhibit. I first became aware of the museum about 6 years ago by attending the auto show. And my wife, Jackie, started volunteering almost right away as a docent. I did a few odd projects here or there and some photography, but actually working on photographing the archives started in 2017 with that. And to date, there have been about 1,800 objects and close to 2,000 pictures that I have photographed to be put online. I'm not sure how many of those have gone up yet, but I think most of those are viewable online at this point. As we're taking the photos, Beth, the curator, selects which items we're going to photograph, and then my wife, Jackie, who assists, will label put together a label that we use to identify it. She'll also often help out when I run into issues with either my lighting or sometimes positioning certain things that I just get stuck, and having that third pair of eyes will help. Sometimes I need an extra hand to hold the reflector up so I can light evenly across all the images, and she helps with that as well. After I complete the image, I take it home, and basically I don't do that much with it. We rename the file so that it can match the accession number that the museum has on it, and I will crop the image. I may have to make some minor adjustments, either lightening shadows or darkening highlights, able to make it just a real clear, precise image. At the same time, I also started to notice that there were design elements in specific products that I was photographing that were very representative of the time that those products were either created or used. For example, there is an Elgin-made oven that had a lot of very detailed scroll pattern on the outside of the oven door. That was very typical of the Victorian era with detailed scrolling. And the difference between this exhibit and what's online is this exhibit takes into account the artistic elements of the image. The images that are online really don't have that unless it's intrinsic within the image, because what I've tried to do on those images is capture as much detail and on a very plain background so that when people are looking at the image, they can understand as much as possible about the actual item that is being photographed, not necessarily just the artistic value of it. So another example is the ladies' compacts that were made at the Elgin American factory, which is part of the Illinois Watch Case Company, which has quite a history here in Elgin. In these cases, they had very detailed Art Deco kinds of design, which are very common in the 1930s and that whole era. Well, because I love abstract and I love the detail in things, I used a lot of macro photography. And typically in things like, there's one image called Watchworks, which you got the very close-up detail of the inner workings of a watch, which is something people just don't normally kind of see. One of the other techniques that I really like to use is a little bit of digital manipulation, where I would either color an image or possibly distort it to, again, bring out some other kind of interest than totally its historical significance. And then third, I used just some very realistic photos. I had mentioned the compact cases. The craftsmanship and artisanship that went into making those cases didn't need any adjustment. They in themselves were something to show off. So I spoke a little while ago about digital manipulation of some of the images. This image, which I've titled Made in the USA, is very obviously digitally manipulated. It's of a toaster made by the Toastmaster Company, who is also an Elgin manufacturer. And this toaster dates from the 1930s, again, the Art Deco period. There wasn't a lot of color photography being used commercially at that point. It existed, but just was not used as much. What did happen, though, is often in printed items, color was added or toning was added to give it a sense of just a little more interest than just a monotone image. So in this color, I used the powers of the magical computer to be able to add some color to that. And I chose just a little bit of red, a little bit of blue, with the idea of red, white, and blue made in the USA, because again, that's very representative of an era when the United States was really probably the leader in producing consumer goods. The current plan is at the end of this exhibit, sometime next year, probably in spring, that all of the original photos will be auctioned off or sold. In the meantime, the images are available either as art prints or as framed art on a variety of media. They're also available on a number of products such as coffee mugs, yoga mats, tote bags, and many more from my website. You can view them on my website at IRA, that's IRA-Marcus, MARCUS, .pixels.com.